This was a good week. This was a good week for your Seattle Kraken anyway. They only play twice, and before you even say it, yes, they did not play exactly the top of the NHL talent pool. But wins are wins, and convincing wins are convincing wins. Kraken beat the Blue Jackets 5-2, and they beat Chicago 3-1. Look, I don't think I've seen the Kraken play better than over these last 3 games. And that's not including their playoff run, obviously, a couple of years ago. But in the last couple of years, this is the best I've seen the Kraken play. And it's nice to see after that dreadful road trip, too. And if you want to start with a negative, you can say, why the struggles with consistency? Well, I think there's an easy answer. An early answer, too. Early was actually correct. How about that? It's early. It's early, and there's some gelling that still needs to happen, I think, with this team. Because 2 of your 4 best players, 2 of your 4 most talented players, certainly, are new. And there has to be some building, some cohesion. But I think you're starting to see that. And what impressed me over these last 3 games was that not only were they terrific, offensively, but they played really well defensively. And the goaltending in particular was just outstanding. Now, look, I say look too often, but it's just a dramatic way to build what you're going to say. So you get that 4-3 win against Vegas, and it breaks the losing streak. And it's nice to see, especially after you scored 1 goal in 9 periods at the end of that road trip. But you take the momentum, and I know I struggle with how real momentum is in sports, YMMV, your mileage may vary. But for me, momentum is only really as good as your next day starting pitcher or whatever team you're playing next. It's nice to win, but I think we sometimes go a little crazy. But you're hoping, John Q Sports fan, you're hoping that you take some momentum after that win against the defending Stanley Cup champions. And the first period doesn't go very well. You fall down 2-0. And if there's a complaint to have about Joey Daccord, it's that he seems pretty beatable early on. He kind of seems like, and of course I'm going to make the baseball comparison. It's because I'm wearing this hat. By the way, this hat costs $62, and it's the worst purchase of my life. I love the Mariners. We'll talk about a place you can get stuff for much cheaper in just a second. But why did I spend $62 on this hat? I'll tell you why, because I'm an idiot. And because it just came out the day before. But he might be that starting pitcher who, you can get early on, and then he settles in. It's a little dangerous in hockey, but it is, I guess, the one thing that I want to see improvement in is maybe starting out hot. You can't complain about these results, though, because after that first period against the Blue Jackets, the next 2 games, Joey Daccord was phenomenal, doesn't even begin to state it. 38 saves against Columbus, and then 18 saves on 19 attempts against Chicago. That's elite. That's elite. And the cool thing here is, well, there's a few cool things. Number 1, it's awesome. Number 2, we've seen Joey Daccord play like this before. It's awesome to see that we've seen Joey Daccord play like this. This is not out of nowhere. It seemed a little out of nowhere last year, but it's been sustainable enough to know that, the Kraken have a legitimate number 1 goaltender. And what he did, especially against Columbus, and okay, fine. Columbus, not exactly the best offense. Some good players, but, not a team that looks like it's going to be competing for a Stanley Cup spot and probably not for a playoff spot. Doesn't change the fact that the eye test tells you just how good Joey Daccord is right now. And there are some goalies playing absolutely ridiculous right now. Like Freddie Anderson, I think has the last time I checked, it was like a 1.46 GAA. And so I'm not going to tell you that Joey Daccord is the best goalie in the sport. I'm not even going to say he's a top 5 goalie in the sport. But he's a legitimate number 1 option that I feel confident in for a playoff series. And that's cool because they're going to need it. If they're going to be in the playoffs, as streaky as this offense has been in some moments of having some really good offensive play, they're going to need, if they make the postseason, and I think they might. I don't know, but I think they might. Not sold on them being a Stanley Cup contender or anything like that, but certainly I think has a chance to be one of those final 8. They're going to need to win a series or two. Joey Daccord or whoever's in goal, and it should be Joey Daccord at this point. All due respect to Philip Grubauer. They're going to need him to stand on his head, to just be an absolute force between the pipes. Can't believe I just said between the pipes. I'm a real hockey guy now. I said between the pipes. But again, fine. Not the best competition. I don't think it would have mattered who Joey Daccord faced in those 2 games. He was that good. Absolutely that good. I thought the defense behind him, though, was excellent, too. And I think one thing was huge is that no power play saves in either of those games is a testament not only to the Kraken not making mistakes, but a really good defense behind him. Maybe a little bit more the latter than the former, but either way, the fact that he wasn't facing those 4-on-3s, those 5-on-4s, excuse me. 4-on-3 is a lot of fun too, though. But the fact he wasn't facing those situations and the fact that the defense did a good enough job to just prevent that is awesome. The defensive unit for the Kraken is really good. I think that they have one of the best 1 through 6 playing right now. Mainly, and I know that's strong, Brandon Montour is just awesome. Even when he's not scoring points, the completeness of that dude's game is just amazing. Like, and the puck movement when he is in the game, it's so much better. It's just so much better. And the Kraken realize it. That's one of the reasons why they gave him a big old contract. But even in games where he doesn't score, and he didn't score a point in either of those games, you see him affecting play. You see him affecting play on both sides. Speaking of that as well, I think that Jamie Oleksiak has been playing a lot better as of late. Really struggled at the beginning of the season. I think he's done a nice job. Adam Larson obviously is a really good player. Riker Evans doesn't get talked about enough. And the fact that he's such a young player too and already making an impact is really exciting. He doesn't get the hype of some of the other young players and probably shouldn't. But man, he's a good player. Man, is he a good player. And I think the future is extremely bright for him. Extremely. So to get that production from your defensive line, like they're rushing the quarterback, but to get that production from your back end is really important because they don't have that 80-point guy. Well, maybe they do. Real quick, Simply Seattle. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. Thank you guys so much for going and spending your money there. www.simplyseattle.com. Use code MOLLYWOP15, MOLLYWHOP15 to save 15% off your order. It's a great deal. Link in the description, www.simplyseattle.com. The forwards. Matty Benier's had a really good game against Chicago, and it was nice to see the finishing skills put on display. Because sure, it was a nice pass. But seeing that he does have the ability to finish around the net, I think is critical. And look, said it again. Yes, I want more production from Matty Beniers. And he's on pace to be about a 50-point guy, and that's not good enough. Not for a guy who has his talent and was drafted where he was. It's not. But I think if you've watched him play this year, you're seeing closer to the rookie version of Matty Beniers than the second year guy. And I think some of that has to do with less pressure on him. And I think some of that just has to do with making an adjustment. Young players have to make adjustments. And I also think that there's a little less pressure on him defensively right now. Boy, did they put a lot of pressure on him defensively as a rookie, or as a second year, and as a rookie too. And he's capable of it. But I just think, you see that goal, but just watching him play right now, you can tell he's more comfortable. You can absolutely tell he's more comfortable. Great to see Jaden Schwartz get on the board in that game. In the Blue Jackets game, Ty Cartier, I think he's extremely underrated. Extremely underrated. And, it's tough because I'm sure the Kraken would like this guy to go get minutes in Coachella, but he's doing a pretty solid job. It's tough to say that you can't have him right now. Jaden Schwartz with a couple of games with points. Brandon Tanev is on an absolute heater. Love to see that. Look, I talked a bunch in the last video about how I am not as infatuated with Brandon Tanev as the rest of the city is, but can't argue with the production. Can't argue with the production one bit, especially the last 3 games. It's been fun to see. Very fun to see. Not sure you can count on it, but, tough to argue with that production. And speaking of production, so one other negative is hopefully Jordan Eberle's okay, who had a 2-assist game against Chicago, leaves with an injury, 2-assist game against Columbus, leaves with an injury against Chicago. Hopefully he's okay. He's a very important part of that offense. Not only a very important part of that offense, he's an important part of just the leadership, the cohesion. Should have been the captain last year. Glad he's got that C now. But here's hoping he's okay. Because he's been extremely productive to begin the year. And speaking of productive, Jared McCann doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And if Jared McCann was a Seattle Mariner or a Seattle Seahawk or Seattle Supersonic someday, I think we'd be talking about him a lot more. Jared McCann is an absolute force offensively. And I talked about how I don't think they have an 80-point guy. I might be wrong. Because I think Jared McCann might be able to be that type of guy. And he's come close. He had a 70-point season a couple of years ago and probably would have been around that mark if not for injury last year. He's just such an underrated player with the puck in his hands. And no, he's not a Connor McDavid. No, he's not he's not a Connor Bedard. He doesn't have that kind of talent, but he's really good. He is really, really, really good. And signing him to that extension, I think, is probably the best move of Ron Francis's career. Because I think his skill set's going to age well. Is he the best defensive forward? No. Is he someone who can be a little streaky? Sure, of course. Do I like to answer my easy questions? You bet I do. But man, we don't talk about Jared McCann as being one of the better Seattle athletes. We probably should. Because he's been nothing but productive since joining the Kraken. And, right now, 20-point season, on pace for, I think, right around 90 points. That's probably not sustainable. But his offensive skill set absolutely suggests that he could be an 80-point guy. And we've seen him be a 40-goal scorer. It won't be that shocked if Jared McCann ever has a 50-goal year. Will it be asking myself questions again? Will it be as impressive as some other 50-goal seasons? No, because, but that's not taking anything away from him. He's a really good player, and we owe the Toronto Maple Leafs a lot of flowers for allowing him to get protected. And I realize they make the trade so that they can forget who the other player was going to be, but they basically make that trade for Jared McCann, knowing that, hey, if they select him, we get to keep this guy. It was a nifty little piece of business in one way, but I'm really thankful for Jared McCann. Very, very thankful. And I'd be thankful if you hit like on this video. I'd be thankful if you hit subscribe. Bunch of stuff coming up. Mariner content, Seahawk content, Kraken content, of course, Husky basketball content. And check out Sports Sometimes, my new podcast that I do on YouTube now. First episode is up with my buddy David Roth. Would really appreciate you checking that out. Thanks so much. See you next time. And hey, go Kraken.